Sup everyone, Mace the Omnilution here, and last week my computer had problems, and it was sluggish as shit. So I've tried many solutions, and it didn't work out, or it made it worse. So yesterday I had no choice but to reset this PC, and it took me like an hour and 15 minutes, and that includes the starting screen where your shit is where they were. Except the apps I've installed, which includes a lot of games, Sony Vegas, DxTory, etc. So it runs smoothly once again, but I have to be extra careful on what shit I trust. So yeah. Anyways, I'm starting to use more freeware software from now on. Because if you're wondering why I don't run ads, is because the aforementioned Vegas and DxTory I was using are actually cracked versions. Yeah, I admit that. I use cracked shit. Because I was desperate and using Windows Movie Maker is pretty much shit, and Cam Studio is kinda crappy with a low-end PC. Now I'm busting the XSplit broadcaster in this new video editing software called HitFilm 4 Express. What I heard is that this is the best free video editing software you can get, and it works similar to Adobe After Effects and other expensive video editing software you have right now. The only downside is that because it has paid content. I'll get used to these if I can. Now enjoy the actual video. Or not. Depends how you like it. Books and movies. They mix very well. Comic books and movies. They mix well if done right. Comic books and video games. They mix well if done right. Movies and video games. Not so much. Video games and movies existed for a very long time. Video games exist since the 50s, where it began as a game of virtual tennis using nothing but radar equipment. And then they evolved from vectors on radar to pixels on a TV screen, then polygons, and then excessive lens flare and bloom, and yeah. Movies existed way back in the late 1800s, where it stars some guy riding a horse in a silent looping animation. So pretty much a GIF before GIFs existed. To the rise of the big five movie studios, which is Warner, Fox, MGM, Universal, and Disney, which was RKO at the time. And then the introduction of speech in films, then color, CG, then HD, then 4K, and then 9K Ultra HD on Betamax. So what happens when you put video games and movies together? Well, you get either two things. One's a complete success, and the other is a total train wreck. Film producers and game developers are very different, and I could see why. Game developers make mostly original content, but rarely makes games based off films, if they wanted to. While movie makers rarely make anything original, instead they make movies based off books or comics or true stories, and it takes off from there. But both sides of the spectrum are far from perfect. So for every Super Mario Bros. And Dick Tracy, there's always a Bubsy 3D and Catwoman. And every Legend of Zelda and Roger Rabbit, there's always Ninja Bread Man and 8 Crazy Nights. So how come movie-based video games are a mixed bag, and video game movies seems like a freshman trying to serve fugi? Fugi is a Japanese pufferfish meal, by the way. First, let's talk about movie-based games. The story of your typical movie goes like this. The beginning, the setup, the rising action, the peak, the climax, the falling action, and the end. So how does typical video games work out? The beginning, the learning curves, tougher levels through progression, boss fights, final level, final boss, the end. Well, that's my perspective. What do you expect? So how will this be translated to a video game, based off the movie? It depends on what genre it is. Like, if it's an action game like Rambo, it could be a shooter or light gun game. Or an adventure film like Atlantis, and it's a platformer with action elements to it. A lot of these movie games can vary, but has to follow the movie's plot. While the game plays well, it looks great. Some good examples are Batman on NES, Aladdin on SNES and Genesis, GoldenEye on Nintendo 64, Spider-Man 2 on 6th-gen consoles, and Ghostbusters, the video game, on 7th-gen consoles. Well, if it's an LJN game, stay away from those, because a lot of these games by them are not great, like Jaws, Terminator 2, Karate Kid, Nightmare on Elm Street, and most notably, Back to the Future. Because the LJN ones are not mostly, related to the films that's based off, with a side of bad programming. But that's just me watching too much AVGN, so what do you expect? Besides that, LJN is not the only one who fucks up these tie-ins. Take Fight Club, for example. The 1999 movie is a masterpiece, and many people theorize it's like an adult version of Calvin and Hobbes for some reason. Maybe imaginary friends is the cause, but who knows. The 2004 game by Vivendi Universal, however, is completely crap. It's a 3D fighting game, consistent to the theme, but gameplay-wise, it's ass, with bad animations, subpar graphics, and you'll be scratching your head on why Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit is in the game, with no relations to the movie whatsoever. Another example is the European exclusive Charlie's Angels on Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. It beat 'em up by Nico Entertainment, published by Ubisoft, and it's based off the films. And guess what? It's panned up the ass so hard that the American release for the game was cancelled. This leads up to the films based off video games. I have 4 of them. Well, 6, but I can't find the other 2. That is Mortal Kombat, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, Prince of Persia Sands of Time, and Blood Rain. And guess what? All of these are under 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, but 3 of them can be tolerable. Mortal Kombat was a great film at the time, even though the series doesn't have much of a story before Mortal Kombat 3 in my opinion. Final Fantasy VII's Japanese version was better, and Prince of Persia was alright, if you haven't played the games, by the way. But the shittiest one of the bunch is Blood Rain. The only thing that's good is Blood Rain 2 that came with it. But this movie, however, is a cardinal sin by one of the worst movie directors, who is pretty much the LJN of filmmaking, Uwe Boll. Yeah, he directed and produced House of the Dead, 2 Alone in the Dark movies, 3 fucking Blood Rains for God's sakes, Postal, yes, that game, In the Name of the King, and Far Cry. Oh, and he takes criticism a little too seriously, which leads him and some critic to a boxing match. Yep. Just like video games, Boll is not the only one who fucks up these films. A lot of them actually fucks up these films. Let's take Tomb Raider, for example. A great game series with a few duds, which stars Lara Croft, an archaeologist who travels across the globe searching for lost artifacts and infiltrating tombs and ruins along the way, while shooting the fuck out of everything and flipping around and such. Yeah, I haven't played the game, so what? The film, however, stars Angelina Jolie, which is a great casting choice, who tries to obtain ancient artifacts from the Illuminati. Wait, what? Well, that's what I'm reading from the wiki page, but it's criticized by the blatant action, scenes, and crappy plots. But then again, it's financially successful for a second film. And guess what? It's an improvement, but still sucks. But there's a very rare occurrence when the video game itself kills the film. Oh yeah! The game is praised to glory, while the film sucked hard, as the critics said. Yes, I'm talking about the movie Ratchet & Clank. Apparently, the movie was released after the game did. So yeah, it looks amazing, it has the original voice cast, and it's animated by Rainmaker Entertainment, who's also known for the TV show called Reboot. So, do you know why the movie sucked, as said by critics? Most of the movie is basically cutscenes from the game. I'm not joking, that's the excuse here. Even though I haven't watched the movie or played the game, but at least, It's no Blood Rain or Mortal Kombat Annihilation. I can tell you that much. But let's not jinx the upcoming Warcraft film, which has the fighting chance, but will lose anyway. Ah, screw it, I'm rooting for Sly Cooper this time. Fuck me, right? Even though those selected games are acceptable for a movie adaptation, I don't think so for games that has no story or barely has one like Angry Birds and fucking Tetris. Angry Birds is just a mobile game where you shoot birds at green pigs, but it's a rip-off to Crush the Castle except using a big slingshot instead of trebuchet. Tetris, on the other hand, doesn't need a movie. I mean, how in the holy motherfuck can you make a story about falling blocks and clearing them by making a roll of blocks? There's no way it will work. At freaking least, Angry Birds had a simple plot. Pigs stole her eggs, and they'll die by a bunch of pissed off birds. And the geniuses at Rovio made up their own story based around that, with a side of modern trendy shit sprinkled around it. Yeah, I watched it in theaters for the sake of my little sister. It's pretty much mixed, by the way. But when is there a good film that's based off a video game series? Well, I have no idea how to please Rotten Tomatoes for more than 33%, but there's Street Fighter, the movie, at a whopping 78%. Wait, wrong film. That's Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, at a whopping 78% by Rotten Tomatoes. And this is the only one that redeems itself with high ratings by them. But ratings can be meaningless, unless you watch these films. If you like them, good. If you don't, that's okay. But, if I'm talking about movies that's based off video games in general, fictional or not, it has a fighting chance to be successful, like Wreck-It Ralph, or down the shitter, like Pixels. Either way, they don't mix well if you don't have the ingredients. Back to Ratchet and Clank. It has all the ingredients in a silver platter, but it slipped and fell flat by the game itself. But what if the movie was released before the game did? It wouldn't have made much of a difference except slightly higher ratings. But the marketing for this still sucks. Yeah. So, how do I conclude this video? Fuck it. Video games and movies don't mix if you don't have the perfect ingredients. I mean, there's an upcoming Sly Cooper film next year, but I had hopes that it won't end up with the same fate as Ratchet and Clank did. So yeah. My name is Mace the Omnilution, and I'll see you later. Bye.